The racing thoughts, the constant worry, the hypervigilance, the inability to sleep, the feeling on edge all the time, that is me. That's exactly what I'm feeling. It made me feel less crazy. It made me feel like I wasn't just broken, but maybe I was just struggling with something real. Welcome back to the Mom Department. I'm Deborah, and today I'm going to be sharing something deeply personal. It's not something I really want to share or even want to admit publicly, but I'm going to because I know that I'm not the only one that goes through this postpartum, and I think someone out there who's listening may be helped by what I'm going to say in sharing my story. I'm going to talk about my experience with postpartum anxiety. I honestly didn't know that that's what I was experiencing until about 2 weeks ago. I thought I was just stressed. I thought I was just probably really tired. I thought I was sick. And I don't want another mom to go through what I went through without having the words, the awareness, and the tools to get help. So here's what I'm covering today. I'm going to share my story, the unfiltered version, and what I expected versus what actually happened, and what postpartum anxiety looked like for me, the turning point when I realized that something was wrong, and how I got help. And then I'm going to walk you through the practical steps so that if you're going through this, you'll know exactly what to do to get help. I want to talk about this because knowing that something is wrong is only half the battle. I think the biggest battle is knowing what you need to do about it. And that's why I'm really sharing my story today. This wasn't my first baby. By the time I had my most recent, I've already been through postpartum about 3 other times. And I honestly thought that I knew the drill. I knew exactly what to expect. Postpartum wasn't the biggest thing I was worried about. Actually, the biggest thing I was worried about was delivering my baby. I knew postpartum would be hard. I knew I'd be tired. I knew there would be an adjustment period, the hormones crashing, the sleep deprivation, the physical recovery. I knew all of that because I've done this 3 other times. I figured I knew what to expect. I thought, I've got this, especially since my birth was so smooth and much easier than my last. But honestly, this time was so different, and I really couldn't understand why or figure out why. I had a great birth. Why was I feeling so different? I would say that this recovery felt like one of my best, but mentally, I honestly didn't feel like myself. In the early weeks, I started to notice things that didn't feel right. My brain felt really, really foggy, and my heart would feel like it's racing and pounding all the time. I remember one day I just ended up checking my blood pressure when I got that familiar headache that I had had once during my last postpartum experience. My head was pounding, and that was my first sign to go check or that something might be wrong. And when I checked my blood pressure, it was extremely high. But I kind of just told myself that this was just a newborn phase. I wasn't getting much sleep and that it would just pass. And, I was probably just stressed with starting homeschool for the first time. I had a newborn and just new life demands. And I thought I was just, stressed. But honestly, it didn't pass and it got worse. Actually increasingly worse. And I guess looking back, I can see all the signs that I dismissed or just explained away. At night, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie there just with my heart pounding, running through every possible thing that could go wrong, which is so weird for me. I would think about something happening to me or something happening to one of my kids. I would instantly think that I was going to or that I had cancer, or I'd be searching online for every possible disease that I probably had, or something that my kids had. I was just irritable. I was snapping at my husband. I felt like I was getting short with my kids. And I just felt like I was just vibrating with anxiety, but I didn't call it that. I didn't know that this was what anxiety felt like. I just thought that this is just what it's like with 4 kids. I'm adjusting. I have a lot of kids around me. I'm maybe overstimulated, that this is just new mom stress. And I thought that this is just maybe how it's going to be for now. This is a new season until I adjust. I think what I didn't realize was that I was experiencing something that had a name and that it was something that actually could just be treatable. But I didn't know that. I didn't have the words for that. I didn't even know how to explain what I was feeling. And I kind of want to get a little bit more specific here because when I was in it, again, I didn't know what postpartum anxiety looked like. I thought anxiety meant panic attacks. I thought it meant that you were unable to function. And here I was functioning. I was actually super functioning, even when I felt off. I thought anxiety meant that you're just at home, you're crippled with it, you're unable to do anything, you're unable to get out of your bed. But I wasn't. I was functioning. So I guess that meant that I was fine. But honestly, I wasn't fine. And here's what it actually looked like for me when I was going through it. I felt like my brain would not stop racing all day and all night. It just constantly felt like my brain was running. I constantly felt like I was worrying, and I was constantly worrying about myself, constantly worrying about my kids, constantly worrying about things that weren't being done, things that were piling up, and I just couldn't catch up, and everything just felt so much, and it just felt like I was increasing worry 24/7. I felt like I was constantly playing worst case scenarios on repeat, and I just felt like I couldn't relax. Even when everything was calm, I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I felt like I was hyper vigilant and just always on alert. It's like the feeling of like you're constantly in fight or flight mode. And when I would try and sleep, I felt like I couldn't really get into deep sleep. I constantly felt like after waking up in the morning, my body was exhausted, my head felt cloudy, but my brain just wouldn't shut off. And I felt like when I would sleep, I'd be laying there and I'd just be in lucid sleep where you feel like you're sleeping, but you can kind of sense everything that's going on around you. Like my head was still running and my heart felt like it was still racing. And I think that all of this, not sleeping, just constantly feeling like I was rushing and racing, and I think all of that contributed to my blood pressure. And I felt like it wasn't just in my head, my body was responding to it too. At some point, my body started to manifest this anxiety. My heart would race out of nowhere, and then I started to have heart palpitations, and I would have shortness of breath. I just felt like I was shaky, like I was on edge, and my hands and my face just started to tingle when I would feel stressed, and my body felt like it was constantly in the fight or flight mode. So if you've ever felt like what your body felt like in fight or flight mode, that's what I was experiencing almost daily. And with being like that all the time, I just felt so exhausted. Like it went beyond just like the normal new mom tired or sleep deprivation. This just felt like complete depletion, like that sleep just couldn't fix. And I also felt that emotionally I was a mess, but not in the way that I expected, like when someone was like had like crippling anxiety would feel. I didn't feel sad. I wasn't crying all the time because I would expect if I were crying or felt sad, I'd probably say I had the baby blues, but I wasn't crying. I wasn't sad all the time. And that's why I didn't think I had anything that was like postpartum related. But I honestly felt irritable. I'd be snappy, and I just felt so overwhelmed by things that really shouldn't overwhelm me. I just felt disconnected from myself. I felt disconnected from everything, and I felt like I was just going through the motions of my daily life, but I wasn't just like mentally there. And I also felt a lot of guilt, like constant guilt. Like, why can't I just relax? What's going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? This isn't my first rodeo. Like, I've had 3 other kids. I love this season of life, but everything just felt like it was just burying me. And I just couldn't understand what was going on with me. And it's honestly just, it sucks to feel this way and like feel like there's no way to express or put words into what you're going through. And there are some specific moments that I remember that really stuck out for me. I remember one night I was laying in bed and my heart just started pounding, and I thought something was wrong with me physically. So I ran to go check my blood pressure, and it was spiking. And I just sat there checking my blood pressure repeatedly over and over and over again on that machine until the batteries ran out. And then I sat there determined to search what was going on with me. And I decided that the next morning I was going to schedule a doctor's appointment because something clearly was wrong with me. So the next day I scheduled a doctor's appointment. And when I went to the doctor's appointment, I told her kind of what I was experiencing. And she ran and did blood work on me, and everything came out fine. And she gave me some tips, and she kind of set me on my way. And then I had a little bit of relief, and I was like, okay, I'm fine. Everything's okay. But then again, the anxiety came back and it creeped back up again. And I ended up going back to the doctors a couple of months later, and I was just like, like I'm having high blood pressure. I just don't feel like myself. I think something is wrong. And she kind of talked me through what I was going through in my life. She kind of suggested I needed to get sleep. I needed to hydrate myself. I needed to try and reduce some stress. Like even suggested maybe weaning my baby and kind of tried to talk me through maybe what was going on with me. She thought it was just like a high stress and like, which I was stressed. I was homeschooling for the first time. I was postpartum. I had 4 kids at home with me. It was a lot. Although I think she was correct in what she was telling me, but I believe that there was obviously the anxiety piece that she might have missed. And so because my doctors were telling me I was fine and everything physically was checking out with me, I started to just hide it. I would smile and I would just say that I was fine whenever my husband would just check in with me. I didn't want anyone to think that I couldn't handle postpartum experience that I was going to, or just to think that I was crazy because I'm going to the doctors, they're saying I'm fine, but I know inside of my head, I don't feel like myself. And honestly, I didn't connect any of this to postpartum anxiety because I wasn't depressed. I wasn't having thoughts of harming myself or my baby. I was just feeling scared and worried all the time, constantly feeling on edge and just constantly in fight or flight mode. I thought that this is just what it was going to be from now on or until I weaned my baby and maybe my hormones started to balance out. I thought that it was just because I wasn't adjusting well to this new stressful season of life. And I thought it was just me. I thought nobody else was going through this. And I didn't know that there was a name for what I was going through. And I didn't know that there was help available to me. So you're probably wondering, when did I realize that this actually wasn't normal? When did I finally admit that something was probably wrong? And I'll honestly say that there really wasn't a dramatic event or dramatic moment that happened. It was more so I just was laying there one day and I was like, I can't keep feeling this way. And my body was starting to manifest this stress physically. And so one day I just thought, like, this isn't sustainable. So something really has to change. Admitting that was kind of terrifying because I had all of these thoughts that were running through my head. It was like, what if people think I can't handle being a mom for the 4th time? What if something really is wrong with me? Like, what if something's really wrong with me? What if I'm really sick? There was just so much shame around acknowledging it. And I just felt like asking for help meant that I was admitting that I was actually failing. Then one day I remember I came across this online platform for doctors around women's health. And I immediately went on that website and I booked an appointment with a doctor. And I explained to the doctor what I'd been going through and the tests that I'd had done, blood tests, the ultrasound, just telling her what I was feeling, what I was going through. She then kind of explained that she really didn't think that there was something physically wrong with me. Since all the tests that I had done pointed to me being okay, she didn't think that there was something physically wrong with me. She didn't think that doctors had missed something. Then she mentioned the term postpartum anxiety. She listed all of the symptoms that you could experience with postpartum anxiety: the racing thoughts, the constant worry, the hypervigilance, the inability to sleep, physical symptoms, the feeling on edge all the time. And I was just like, wow, that is me. That's exactly what I'm feeling. It made me feel less crazy. It made me feel like I wasn't just broken, but maybe I was just struggling with something real and I just didn't know that. And as we talked through it, she mentioned that there was medication that I could take, but she didn't really want to take me down that route first. She wanted me to try therapy, specifically cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a type of therapy that kind of discusses ways to cope with triggers. And she wanted me to find out what my anxiety triggers were and help give ways to manage that so then I don't go down those spiraling thoughts. And after that appointment, I just felt so encouraged and just almost like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I had never felt more empowered and more felt like there was an actual road ahead for me than after that appointment. And I remember talking to a friend, mentioning what the doctor had told me and what we had talked about. And my friend was like, I went through that too. I had anxiety as well. And I was surprised because I'd never known that my friend had gone through anxiety. And we talked all the time. I just never knew that she was going through that. And she mentioned the same things that I was feeling and that she was going through it. And I just made me think about how many other moms are actually going through this and going through it in silence. And that's why I felt like I had to share this with you guys. I can't imagine that if I'm going through this alone, that somebody else is actually going through this alone. And if you feel like you're going through this, put anxiety down in the comment box, because I can imagine that I felt so lonely going through this that somebody else is probably feeling lonely as well. We shouldn't feel so siloed about this. We should talk about it, because I felt like when I was going through it that I was almost just crazy. Nobody else was going through this but me. I really feel like the appointment with my doctor, talking to my friend, was just a real turning point for me. I felt like once I admitted that something was wrong, I had to figure out what to do about it. And here's what I did and what I learned along the way, and I hope that it could help you as well. The first thing I did was talk to a doctor. Just like I explained, going to the doctor is honestly the hardest conversation you'll have, but it'll be the best thing that you ever do. I was nervous and I just didn't know how to explain what I was feeling, and I felt like they were going to dismiss me or feel like I was just overreacting, but I made myself say those words that, one, I didn't feel right, and I think that something is wrong. Another thing I did was get blood work, and I didn't know that blood work mattered so much, but when I talked to my doctors, they did blood works like thyroid panels, vitamin D panel, B12, iron. This is where you can learn if you have deficiencies or if something's going a little bit wacky with your hormones. So if you're struggling, ask for blood work. Sometimes what looks like anxiety can also have a physical component that can be treated as well. Another thing that I did was, again, I mentioned I found a therapist who specialized in postpartum mental health. And I'm not going to lie, finding the right person took some effort. I tried different therapists just to see who I felt most comfortable with. But once you do, I think therapy, it gave me a space to process what I'm feeling just without any judgment. It gives me tools and it gives me strategies for managing anxiety, and it helps me understand why my brain is doing what it's doing. Another thing I had to also do was let my husband in, because I'd been hiding how bad it was getting because I was trying to protect him, or maybe kind of just protecting my pride and myself from thinking that I was crazy. But once I told him the truth, everything shifted. He didn't try to fix it. He just kind of listened and started to take things off my plate. It's just so I could rest and not stress. Sometimes support just looks like your partner taking the baby so you can sleep. Sometimes it looks like them just sitting with you while you process everything. One of the things I always say is just let your people in and assume that they want to help, but just may not always know how. I found that once I communicate what I'm going through, my husband ends up always meeting me where I'm at, and you never realize how much you keep inside until you start talking, and then you realize you can't stop talking. But once I started to let my husband know what's going on with me, he has just been such a godsend on trying to just lessen my load. And lastly, there are small things that I've started to do day to day to help me. I've started to get outside, even if it's just for a few minutes, moving my body. I've started to set boundaries around what I can handle, and I've made sure not to overload my plate, because when I overload my plate, I think it starts to contribute to my anxiety, especially about what I can do and what I can't do. And I've just started really not over stressing myself and adding too much to my plate, because I already have such a busy, full life. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a homeschool mom. I take care of our house. I manage everything around our house. So not adding too many other commitments has significantly helped me. And again, I like to say that none of these things that I've just mentioned are the cure to my anxiety, but I think they just have helped me feel a little bit more like myself while I'm getting better. So I've just shared my whole story with you guys. Now I want to make sure you know exactly what to do if this sounds like you. The next step is you don't have to wait until your 6 weeks checkup. If something feels wrong, go and call your doctor now. Be honest, say the words that you need to say, that maybe one, something is wrong, and two, I'm struggling. Ask to be screened. Ask for blood work, ask for your thyroid to be checked, your vitamin D levels, your B12, your vitamin B12, your iron. And if your provider dismisses you, make sure you advocate for yourself or find another provider, because you deserve to be heard and not dismissed or made to feel like you're crazy. Another thing I would say is look for a therapist who specializes in maybe perinatal or postpartum mental health, so that way they can really help address what you're going through. Step 4, let someone in. You don't have to do this alone. Tell them what you're experiencing. Tell them what you need, even if it's just, I need you to listen, without trying to fix it. Because men love to try and fix things, but tell them you don't need fixing. You just need someone to listen. Before I close, I want to speak directly to someone who really needs to hear this, because I hope that this episode helps. If it's just one person, if it's just many people, I just want to be able to speak directly to whoever needs to hear this. I want you to know that you are not crazy, that you are not a bad mom, and you're not broken. Honestly, what you're feeling is real, and it has a name, and it's treatable. I wish I had actually gotten help sooner. I wish I'd talked to my doctors sooner, and I'm telling you this so you don't have to go through or wait as long as I did, 8 months postpartum. Asking for help is honestly the bravest thing that you can do. And I want you to know that it really does get better, because I'm feeling a lot better now, 2 weeks post my appointment. I'm not going to pretend that I'm cured or that everything is perfect now, because healing isn't linear and there's still hard days that I'm going through. But I am in a much different place than I was before, and I'm starting to learn new tools, and I have support, and now I have the language for what I experienced, and I have hope that everything's going to get better and that my hormones will eventually kind of stabilize and I'll feel much better. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Comment below. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.